It was the ruling that stopped the country cold. From this second forward, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle possess zero royal status, perks, or acknowledgement. The monarchy has to be shielded from users. With 25 icy calculated words, King Charles III dropped a bombshell proclamation, unprecedented in recent memory, rattling the very bedrock of the British, throne-splitting worldviews and formally closing a book of turmoil that stretched on for almost 10 years. This wasn't a retreat. This was a surgical excision, chill, exact, and without remorse. And the victim, none other than England's formerly golden boy. Do you think this marks the finale for Harry and Meghan, or is it merely the start of a retaliation unlike anything else? Stick around to the finish to see how William's quiet demeanor became his biggest asset, and why Catherine is now the real soul of the institution. Make sure to smash that subscribe button, toggle alerts, and leave a reply with your thoughts on this historic royal meltdown. You are tuned into Windsor Today, where we pull back the veil and expose the reality behind the palace walls. And centered in this mess was a rage the masses had almost never witnessed from the monarch. For months, palace moles murmured that Charles was getting fed up with the Sussex sideshow, but nobody predicted he'd take it this far or cut this deep. During the broadcast, speech shown throughout the UK and Commonwealth, Charles didn't sound sad or fatherly. He was clinical, disciplined, and clearly furious. He charged Meghan with calculated manipulation, treating Harry like a living prop for royal clout, utilizing his heritage to scale the social ranks of Tinseltown. The king labeled her actions a blemish on the crown's honor, wording so harsh that historians instantly likened it to the rhetoric used regarding Edward VII. Next came the takedown of Harry. It wasn't subtle, wasn't hidden, and wasn't cushioned by dad-like love. Charles stated his youngest boy had turned wild, impressionable, and oblivious to being used. A guy trading thankfulness for a show and relatives for headlines. Beneath the king's stiff upper lip was a signal crystal clear to every listener. That's it. Although friction had brewed for ages, informants claim the last straw happened at a celebrity-packed Hollywood bash. Kris Jenner's 70th birthday, an event dripping with cash influence and the type of clout Meghan hungered for way before meeting Harry. Jeff Bezos, Lauren Sanchez media tycoons, Silicon Valley giants, stars, suits, and billionaires. It was the precise scene Meghan had been chasing, according to palace sources. But the following events were the match that lit the king's fuse. Several guests claimed. Meghan insisted raw pictures of her and Harry get scrubbed. From social platforms claiming release waivers and contract rights that the hosts said were fake. Mortified staff swore no deal like that went down. Hollywood chuckled. The palace didn't. The look was a disaster. Washing up Duchess supposedly controlling pics at a bash she hardly got an invite to. A lady flexing royal power she didn't have anymore. A display of privilege that rang out through gossip rags and diplomatic channels. To Charles, who spent 40 years attempting to update the firm and protect its honor, this was embarrassing, and the ultimate evidence he felt that Meghan never got or respected the family business she married into. But the knockout punch didn't come from Meghan but from Harry. While William was working for the firm at a huge climate summit down in Brazil, Harry popped up out of nowhere in Canada. When asked, he swore he cleared it with HQ. The palace, though, had zero proof of that green light. Zip. No email, no memo, no text, not one sentence in the official travel diary. To the king, this wasn't just a mix-up. This was a straight-up distortion. Even worse, Meghan's team put out a blurb saying Harry was a free agent and didn't need a hall pass from anybody. To royal aides, this was the precise issue they felt Meghan had. Spent years brainwashing Harry into thinking he was above the codes applying to every other Windsor. This wasn't freedom. This was mutiny. Behind closed doors, the king allegedly told staffers, "Meghan treats my boy like a shopping bag of royal status. She isn't going to use my family name as her trinket. The room went dead quiet. It was the roughest private remark ever noted from Charles regarding his daughter-in-law. He then dropped the one-liner that defined everything after. Harry let this happen, so now he pays the tab. Sources claim this. A. Was the second Charles made his final call. Strip every last honor from Harry. Not just to discipline him, but to stop Meghan from milking them. As the Sussex mess spun out of control, one guy stood out. In contrast, Prince William. While the rags dug into his old fights with the media, Charles brought up a story that blew the minds of even the most veteran palace experts. A few years back, William actually won a lawsuit against a big-time tabloid, but rather than keeping the payout for himself, he gave every single cent to charity, including the Invictus Games, the very project Harry founded. And yet Harry didn't offer a single public thank you. For the king, that silence spoke volumes. You had one son serving in silence, while the other was imploding for all the world to see, with Meghan in Charles's eyes fanning the flames. The second King Charles. The third walked out of his private quarters at Buckingham Palace on the night of November 6th. His top advisors could feel what was about to happen. No more riddles, no kid gloves, and no more counseling sessions. The king was ready to make a move, and this move was going to go down in the history books. What started as just another drama was now looked at as a full-blown crisis for the monarchy. For the next 72 hours, a covert squad of legal eagles, strategists, and palace officials kicked off what a source described as a precision strike of total exile. This wasn't just about Harry and Meghan's image anymore. It was about the very life of the institution. That evening, the king called just 3 men into his study. Lord Chamberlain Andrew Parker, the silent muscle behind royal protocol. Sir Clive Alderton, Charles's right-hand man and private secretary. And Simon Enfield, a veteran PR guru known as the Fixer from the Camilla era. When they entered, they didn't take a seat. They stood at attention. Charles didn't mince words. I want a review of everything he ordered, every title, every privilege. Have it finished before the weekend hits. This wasn't just some empty threat. It was the most extreme overhaul of royal status since Edward VIII gave up the throne in 1936. But unlike that moment of shameful withdrawal, Charles was making a power play, not a pity party. Sir Clive Alderton headed up the mission. The question was, what was left to take? Harry and Meghan had walked away in 2020, yet they still held on to major perks. They were still the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, still had the HRH styling. His and her Royal Highness, even if they didn't use it publicly. They had patronages and global clout that banked entirely on the royal brand. What the king demanded now was absolute clarity. This wasn't about revenge, it was about duty. He wanted zero space for confusion. Sir Clive laid it out for the squad. If they aren't working royals, they can't sound like it, act like it, or profit from it. They dug up old archives and looked at past precedents. They even scrutinized the Queen's letters, patent. Inside of 48 hours, they had a battle plan. Step 1. Cut Harry and Meghan's right to use the Sussex name for any business or charity work. Step 2. Wipe all UK-based HRH titles from internal palace comms. Step 3. Tell the Commonwealth offices that Meghan Markle is not to be introduced or treated as royalty during any official event. Step 4. Scrub both their names from all Crown-backed websites and initiatives. Finally, trigger a total media blackout. No comments, no details, no apologies. It has to be surgical. Simon Enfield stressed and ice cold. Simon's job was straightforward. Lock down the story before Harry and Meghan could twist it. He drew up 4 media game plans, depending on how bad the backlash got. Option 1 was the silent strategy, total radio silence, for 48 hours. Option 2 was institution first, focus on crown values, not people. Option 3 was the William highlight shift, the spotlight to the Prince of Wales's calm dignity. And option 4, preemptive sympathy, drop old photos of Charles and Harry, as a kid reminding everyone of the king's patience. But Charles had a specific demand. "I want the world to understand," he stated. This wasn't hate. It was necessary to protect everything we serve. Thanks for tuning in. Even with the official statements and the calm exterior, the anger hadn't cooled down. Sources claim that in one closed-door session, Charles called Meghan the most disruptive woman to marry into the family in a generation. He added, bluntly, "She isn't my daughter-in-law. Not now." Amidst all the turmoil, one person stayed quiet in public but was a power player behind the curtain, Prince William. While he never bashed Harry on record, insiders confirm he backed the king's play 100%. He'd believed for a long time that the crown's future couldn't support the baggage of Harry and Meghan's constant drama. Privately, though, he had one condition: no personal hits on Harry in the press releases. "Don't kick him while he's down," William reportedly told Simon Enfield. "Just shut the door." William's only public reaction came 48 hours later. The Prince of Wales stepped out for a charity gig in East London, smiling, composed and ignoring every question thrown at him. It was a subtle signal to everyone we're moving on. While the suits hashed out the wording, others dealt with the logistics. Harry's coat of arms was silently scrubbed from internal ceremonial files. Security plans were overhauled specifically regarding any of Harry's future trips to UK estates. Meghan's name was deleted from the digital list of royal connections, and any mail addressed to Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex, those papers came back marked up in red. Inside the castle, staffers called the mood clinical, uptight, and dead silent. It was unprecedented. One aide, a veteran who had served under 3 reigns, put it this way: "We've seen scandals. We've seen splits. But this is a whole new ball game. It feels like a forever edit to the royal rulebook." On the morning of November 10th, Charles was up by 6 a.m., going over the final paperwork with Sir Clive, before inking the order that stripped Harry and Meghan of every last perk. The note was brief, blunt and cold as ice. With just one autograph, 2 names were wiped from the family books. When the king's proclamation hit the airwaves worldwide, it went off like a precision bomb, surgical but earth-shattering. In minutes, global news outlets dropped the politeness and went straight for the shock factor. But the real heat didn't come from inside the castle walls. It exploded online, right on the digital front lines where Meghan Markle's fans and haters were, lying in wait. What happened next wasn't just a PR mess. It was a worldwide reset of the royal story, where celebrity crashed into tradition and silence screamed louder than words. The initial backlash was instant. Hashtags on X, formerly Twitter, lit up in all caps. Hashtag Meghan targeted. Hashtag Royal Reckoning. Hashtag Sussex stripped. Hashtag Charles goes nuclear. In one corner, you had the Hollywood A-listers, social justice warriors, and Meghan's ride or dies, accusing the palace of a smear campaign and racist payback. Big-time American influencers dropped viral threads, calling Charles's words a throwback to the 1950s, painting Meghan as a modern woman getting punished for being independent. But over in the UK and across the Commonwealth, people saw it differently. A YouGov flash poll, taken the morning after the news broke, showed 78% of British folks were cool with stripping Harry's last honors. 66% backed, including Meghan in that purge. Down in Australia, Jamaica, and up in Canada, opinion was split, but most people pointed out the brand confusion regarding the Sussex titles and their antics. The London tabloids didn't hold back. "Queen Meghan no more," screamed the Daily Mail. "Charles draws blood." Ran the Sunday "She was never one of us," claimed the Telegraph. The foreign press played it cooler. Le Monde in France called it a desperate survival move by the crown. The New York Times called it a fatal deno crack in Britain's first family. But stateside People magazine ran the headline, "Meghan Betrayed, Behind the Palace Curtain of Revenge." Just hours after the news dropped, the Archewell Foundation put out a two-sentence response. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex remain committed to their humanitarian work. We will not respond to provocation. But sources in Meghan's orbit spun a different yarn. Inside that Montecito mansion, Meghan was reportedly livid, totally blindsided, and already rallying her legal and PR squads. According to one insider who talked to the Times, Meghan felt the palace crossed a line by implying she used Harry. She has never been angrier. The source claimed she views this not as losing titles but as a personal attack. Behind closed doors, phones were ringing off the hook at top crisis firms in LA and New York. A producer from Meghan's old Netflix deal hinted that a new project might get greenlit fast. This just handed her a third act. Yet the blowback wasn't just personal, it was political. Leaks suggest Meghan weighed filing a defamation suit in the UK, claiming that Charles's choice of words, specifically the phrase, "a stain upon the dignity of the monarchy," crossed legal lines. But experts say she'd face an uphill battle unless she could prove specific claims were false and damaging. While Meghan went on the offensive, Harry went dark. No posts, no videos, no leaks, no denials, no emotion whatsoever. People close to him described him as catatonic, humiliated, and quietly wrecked. Friends reportedly reached out after seeing the look on his face during the king's announcement. One source said Harry was warned this was on the cards, but didn't think Charles had the guts to do it. Even worse was the timing. Just days prior, Harry had popped up in Canada, a surprise trip that set off a chain reaction. While William was standing before world leaders in Brazil, handling climate diplomacy for the Crown, Harry's rogue appearance in Canada was read as a deliberate attempt to steal the spotlight, a palace. Insiders believed Meghan put him up to it, viewing it as optics warfare. When asked why he didn't get clearance for the trip, Harry reportedly snapped, "Why do I need permission from people who don't protect me, Charles?" Upon hearing that, supposedly fired back, "Because you still wear the name, I protect." That dynamic, the borrowed shield of the monarchy, had finally shattered. Beyond Britain, the king's decision sent ripples across a teetering realm. Nations were already checking the exits. Jamaica, Australia, and Canada felt the pressure to respond. Jamaica's Prime Minister Portia Allen, usually loud about ditching the monarchy, surprisingly threw her support behind the move. She called it a necessary step, arguing that titles without duty are toxic. Down Under, Australian Republican chiefs claimed the cleanup proved the system is crashing and burning. Senator Eliza Watts posted, "What Charles erased with his pen, we need to finish with our ballots." In Canada, Harry and Meghan's old stomping grounds from 2020, the press was split. The CBC headline asked Sussexes sanctioned, "Did the Crown go too far?" However, the Globe and Mail applauded the king's backbone. For once, the royals didn't flinch. Yet the move dragged the Commonwealth's eyes back to the issue of legitimacy, a conversation Charles had wanted to put off. Behind palace walls, the mood was quiet but tense. Aides noted that Princess Anne backed the king 100%, while Prince Edward called it inevitable. Queen Camilla, on the other hand, pushed for a lighter touch. She was worried about looking petty. A senior staff member noted, "She knew Meghan would weaponize this. We braced for impact, but Charles was done playing PR games." An assistant remembered him murmuring after the announcement went out, "She turned my boy into a billboard." That isn't family, it's marketing. When King Charles III signed that decree cutting off the last of Harry and Meghan's perks, it capped off years of sorrow, holding back, and quiet resentment. But this wasn't just cold politics. It was really the move of a dad who had simply run out of rope. For decades, Charles shouldered the weight of appearances and duty. But beneath the stiff press releases and legal talk lay a profound sadness, not just over a son, but over what that son had transformed into. Underneath the anger of the November Declaration were memories rarely spoken of. Growing up, Harry was the wild one, the burst of energy, the living proof that royalty could still have a sense of humor. After Princess Diana passed, Charles tried his best, however clumsily, to keep his boys united. Friends recall him making frantic efforts to cross the emotional divide in the house. He didn't always know how to show it, said a close aide, but he loved Harry dearly. He respected his fire. In his own way, he valued that spark deeply, even when they were grown. Charles cleaned up Harry's messes. From naked Vegas scandals to outbursts in the papers, the palace PR machine worked overtime to protect him. Sources say Charles always thought Harry would eventually come back home. That hope survived until Meghan arrived. Charles never voiced it to the public, but insiders claim he always watched Meghan Markle with a mix of interest and silent doubt. At first, she wowed the audiences and gave perfect speeches, but in private, Charles reportedly cautioned his team. She knows the moves, but she's playing by her own rules. It wasn't her roots or history that bothered him, it was the commercialism. Every step was calculated for the cameras, noted a former press chief. She wasn't fitting into the institution, she was bending the institution to fit her. It was all about the angle. Over time, Charles started to feel that Meghan had molded Harry into a reflection of her own goals, a living advertisement for her version of royalty. What made him angriest was seeing Harry paraded through Hollywood parties as a prince while trashing the very family that gave him that status. To her, he's not a person, Charles allegedly told staff. He's an asset. He is merely a prop in her portfolio. Charles's team put together a confidential file of incidents that drove the final choice times when Harry had crossed the line, went against the family, or stayed quiet while others attacked them. The Oprah Winfrey sit-down where Harry stayed mum when Meghan hinted at racism. The Netflix show featuring unauthorized clips of private grounds. The couple's podcast that focused heavily on personal complaints. Speeches where Harry bashed the monarchy's legacy overseas. But the silence is what hurt the most. He never said thanks, one courtier disclosed. When Charles walked Meghan down the aisle, when he shielded them from media, blowback. When William quietly funded Invictus, Harry never once acknowledged the help. The king's heartbreak deepened as he watched the gap between his sons turn into a canyon. While Harry got louder, William went silent. For years, the older brother tried to bridge the gap. He sent personal letters. He tried to arrange face-to-face meetings, but Meghan's camp reportedly shut down direct lines demanding everything go through agents. By the time Harry released Spare exposing domestic disputes and allegations of William getting physical, the heir apparent simply went radio silent. Charles was absolutely crushed, less by the specific words and more by the realization that Harry viewed the institution as a source of damage rather than heritage. According to insiders, the breaking point arrived when the king discovered William had been quietly cutting checks to the Invictus Games. It was Harry's signature project funded by a legal settlement William kept under wraps. When his brother didn't offer so much as a single nod of recognition, Charles allegedly whispered, "He has no code left." The unsanctioned Canada tour wasn't merely a lapse in protocol. It was a direct challenge to the Constitution. Harry, still trading on his Duke of Sussex title, showed up at functions where announcers gave him the full royal treatment. He stood for photo ops under signage that implied official endorsement. Local papers ran banners screaming, "Prince Harry returns to serve Commonwealth cause." The palace hadn't greenlit any of that verbiage. Reports suggest Charles's contact at the Foreign Office fielded 3 distinct inquiries from regional diplomats, all asking the same hard question. Is the prince operating under your authority, or is he rogue? The response was a mortifying no. The morning after the Canada debacle, Charles allegedly confided in his top aides, "I set him free. I never expected him to return waving a banner." He was referring to Harry seeming to stand for the crown overseas, all while actively running from it. A high-ranking palace insider disclosed that Charles felt ridiculed, twisted out of context, and backed into a wall. It went beyond hurt. He was furious. And when the king gets furious, he doesn't shout. He drafts memos. That response naturally arrived as a historic announcement and a formal decree, removing every last honor, title, or signifier that could suggest royal approval. By the moment the message went out, Charles had accepted the fallout. The press would have a field day. It would hurt. Harry would go silent. Yet the monarch had made up his mind. He wasn't operating as a dad anymore. He was the institution. That evening, rumor has it, he stopped at the portrait of his mother in the blue drawing room and spoke to the empty air. "Forgive me, Mama, but the boy you adored doesn't walk beside us." When Charles III removed every last scrap of royal privilege from Harry and Meghan, it wasn't merely a personal settling of scores. It was a massive act of corporate triage, a calculated move to rescue history, the chain of command, and national image in an era where the crown itself is under a microscope. Yet, if Charles's bold statement was intended to clear the air, the aftermath was infinitely more complicated. It sparked a complete overhaul of how the institution is perceived, organized, and deployed in the modern era. For years, palace watchers guessed at Charles's plan to slim down the operation, creating a tighter, faster team focused on the job, not the spectacle. That theory turned into hard fact following the Sussex split. Within days of the news dropping, 3 major policies were quietly put into motion. Every secondary charity role held by lower-ranking family members was audited for clout. Future grant money was frozen for any family members who weren't clocking in for active duty. Secret review of all appearances kicked off to measure crowd reaction, media traction, and appeal across generations. Palace insiders leaked that Charles issued a new directive substance over visibility relevance, over ritual. It served as a quiet warning to the entire Windsor operation. Nobody has a job for life anymore, filling the gap left by Harry and Meghan, the Prince and Princess of Wales, have stepped up as the institution's new visual and emotional center. William, previously viewed as the cautious successor, is now framed as the firm's silent CEO, steady, tough, and unshakable in a storm. Catherine, meanwhile, has evolved into the family's most powerful asset, a contemporary yet disciplined figure who never needed a podcast to earn the public's faith. Since the split, Williams' schedule traded glitz for weight, prioritizing youth mental health summits, green tech hubs, and high-stakes diplomatic meetings laden with meaning. His Earthshot prize, once viewed as a pet project, is now handled like a flagship operation. Catherine's calendar has pivoted toward building a legacy. Her efforts, in early childhood development while always respected, have been supercharged by the public's craving for stability. One Times columnist dubbed her the monarchy's version of soft power diplomacy. Together they represent the retooled future, rooted in tradition, but increasingly mission-focused. Despite the stiff formality of Charles's decree, the war for public perception has migrated online, and it is brutal, raw, and algorithm-driven. Social media became an instant voting booth on the crown's survival. On TikTok, Gen Z creators dropped clips roasting Charles's speech as dusty, moralizing lecture. Meanwhile, on YouTube, conservative pundits cheered the king finally stepped up to protect the firm. It's been a long time coming. Over on Instagram, the influencer crowd is totally divided. You had people sharing love notes for Meghan, while others were posting fancy royal edits, hyping up Catherine's classiness. Hashtags have turned into battle lines. Following royal news feels like picking a sports team now. Every photo, every no-show, every story gets dissected the second it drops. And that's the monarchy's biggest weak spot. They don't hold the keys to the narrative anymore. Even as Charles tried to tighten his grip, the public made it clear they think for themselves. Even though Harry and Meghan have been scrubbed from the official books, their mark on the place hangs around like the smell of smoke after a blaze. Why? Because by cutting them out, Charles actually proved how central they are to the whole drama. Every time they step out now, whether it's a tech conference or a glitzy premiere, people ask who they represent. Are they rebel royals? A-list celebs, regular folks, victims of a mean palace, or just the engineers of their own downfall? It's all pretty foggy, and that confusion keeps messing with Charles's main goal, keeping things clear. The danger here is that cleaning house won't be remembered as a disciplined move, but just as more drama. Surveys across Great Britain hint that Charles's choice boosted trust in the short run. A survey right after the news from Ipsos showed 63% of Brits were down with cutting Harry off completely. 71% wanted tighter rules for royal marketing, but only 41% of the under 30 crowd felt the monarchy actually mattered to them. The bottom line, the crackdown, strengthened tradition but didn't fix the gap with the younger generation. Even worse, some think the palace blew a huge chance to show a human side instead of just acting cold and distant. It looked strong, Shure noted, royal expert Fiona Litchfield. But it also looked like a dad taking his son out in front of the entire planet. On the global stage, the monarchy is stuck in a weird spot. Commonwealth countries, especially the ones wanting freedom, are paying close attention. In Jamaica, the clean break was seen as long overdue discipline. But local papers asked, if they can banish their own blood, how will they treat us? Down in Australia, the push for a republic picked up speed, citing the split as evidence of the monarchy's ruthless streak. Up in Canada, writers wondered if Charles's attitude had permanently stained the Windsor name for the folks in the middle. What was supposed to guard the crown might have actually shown how fragile it really is in some places. Charles's plan is obvious now. The monarchy has to survive by being responsible, not just by bloodline, but that takes more than just trimming the family branches. It means planting something fresh. Openness, influence, modern messaging, and a code of ethics for serving the people that holds up against both old traditions and TikTok. The big test isn't just who takes over next, it's staying relevant. Like one high-ranking insider said, the crown drew a line in the sand, but the people decide if it even counts anymore. In the weeks after the king's huge announcement, the monarchy moved into a weird and quiet period, stuck somewhere between fixing the old and inventing the new. The news cycle is calming down. The royal schedule keeps moving. But underneath it all, a major shift is happening. The monarchy isn't just protecting history anymore. It's building an identity for life after Harry and Meghan. King Charles might wear the crown, but it's obvious the emotional heart of the monarchy has moved. In every snapshot, every event, every carefully planned project, Prince William and Princess Catherine are the public soul of the institution now. They're the opposite of the Sussex drama, the calm after the family storm, the stability the crown relies on. William is stepping into a new role, not just as the heir, but as the protector of a cleaned-up Windsor image. After playing it safe for years, he's basically the bouncer for royal dignity. Catherine, with her perfect track record of class, isn't just liked anymore. She's vital. Their job isn't just keeping tradition alive, but making it matter to kids raised on podcasts, YouTube shorts, and celebrity causes. Stripped of their titles and perks, Harry and Meghan are in an awkward spot now, too famous to disappear, but too divisive to make up. Meghan is supposed to launch a new media brand in 2026, one that steps away from the royal drama. But insiders claim branding experts are already wrestling with one big question. Without that Duchess title, what does she stand for, Harry? Meanwhile, is just floating. Friends say he's thinking about a return to working with vets. Others are whispering about speeches, a second book, or even getting back into therapy-focused content. But one thing is for sure. His identity as a prince isn't his to use anymore. The crown repossessed it. For a guy usually seen as quiet, Charles's last big move might define his legacy. Was it too rough? Or exactly? Was it essential? Academics are going to argue over that. Analysts will pick it apart. But sources near the king say he's found a sense of peace now that the dust has settled. One top aide mentioned he laments how things played out, yet he doesn't take back the choice itself. Behind the gates, the vibe is unmistakable. This wasn't an act of discipline. It was purely protection. Still, the shadows linger. Even with all the sovereign authority, pomp, and legal clout, there's a reality Charles can't outrun. The public's view isn't dictated by proclamations these days. It is crafted by storytelling. One post can dismantle a monologue. An audio clip can revise the past. A lone picture, retouched or raw, can flip world opinion in a heartbeat. The crown has weathered combat, walking away from the throne murder attempts, public breakups, and disgrace. Right now, though, it faces a ghost that's tougher to catch. The haze separating who you are from. The brand, the bloodline, and the celebrity. When Charles removed Harry and Meghan's titles, he did more than draw a boundary in time. He posed a query that the throne can't solve by itself. What is the real definition of nobility when the globe is looking on, critiquing and scrolling faster than customs can catch up? The institution stands today, but whether it blooms, adapts, or quietly fades, relies less on DNA or castles and more on faith connection and the delicate skill of letting go.